To another day here at Champion Spring in Seoul, South Korea. I'm Monte Cristo. Joining me is Papa Smithy. We're starting off today with JinAir against CJ, and then rounding out the night with a battle between two of our top teams, KT Rolster and Samsung.
And speaking of top teams, we're coming off, of course, a great best of two, as Nagne is on your screen, but a great best of two between SKT and the Rocks Tigers. It was technically a best of three, but then Koma ruined eSports again.
Yeah, he did.
We got a best of two that was pretty good, though.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the first two games, obviously excellent. If you haven't checked those out yesterday, they did sub in Blank mysteriously as the jungler for game number 3. So SK Telecom, as a result, got crushed relatively quickly by the Tigers, who continue their role undefeated here and the top team, no doubt, in Korea.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. It was an interesting strategic choice to bring in Blank for the last game. Maybe they were trying something. Maybe they just wanted to hide strategies. But the result was 2 close games. But the Rocks Tigers definitely had the advantage for the large part of both of those first 2 games.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, now that Longju's out of the way, now that SKT's out of the way, now that KT's out of the way, the Tigers are really starting to prepare themselves for perhaps an undefeated first round robin here. It's hard to think that anyone else is really going to be able to stop them over a best of 3 right now.
And that's the thing that's kind of slept on, is that this team has faced a lot of the other top opposition, so should be a much easier schedule coming in for the Rocks Tigers in the first half of the round robin.
Yeah, that's right. And for our first match today, we do have JinAir versus CJ. CJ hot off a win over Spenu, but it was a very sloppy series. JinAir 2-1 over Africa. Of course, they did 2-0 SKT earlier this season, so that puts them towards the top of the table and actually looking pretty good and a bit of a surprise.
I mean, JinAir went from a team that I thought would be battling for those bottom spots, potentially even for relegation, to a contender. I think there's still an outside hope. I think they're still likely to fall away as the season goes on. But look, this early in the season, can't argue with 3-1.
Yeah, their loss coming to Longju in their first best of 3, otherwise 3 wins in a row. Samsung, too, coming into tonight. They did get 0-2'd by SKT, but before that, they 2-1 Longju. So even though they've had, I think, a little bit weaker opponents, they're still at the top of the table. As we take a look at our first match, though, JinAir coming up against CJ. CJ did win, but it was a bit of an ugly affair. CJ still obviously having a lot of problems with their very new roster.
Absolutely, and of course their temporary roster to some degree, given that we're expecting to see BDD and Ghost sometime in March, but our second game of the night is a really exciting one. It's between a KT Rolster team that for large swaths of this season have been very impressive. Of course, they did go down last week. But Samsung, another team on the up. Both Samsung and JinAir have been the big movers upwards, the surprise movers, and we get to learn a little bit more about them tonight.
That's right, we do. And first up, it will be the JinAir GreenWings on this side of the arena. And of course, we will be starting with Trace again. They have done much better with Trace as the starter, and what a surprising turnaround. He's a veteran player. He's one of the oldest players here.
28 years old.
Yeah, one of the oldest players here. Yeah.
Is there an older player playing in
Not
high-level
actively.
League of Legends?
Not actively, at least in Korea. And we've seen his Ignite Quinn in the top lane. We've seen his top lane Graves that defeated SK Telecom. We've seen him return to that top lane Morgana. And he has the highest KDA in the league right now at 13.5. So for a guy who basically only played Rumble and Maokai last season, he's shown a surprising ability to truly carry these games and split push and put on the pressure.
I mean, there's just so many things you can talk about with Trace. Top of the MVP rankings. His only multiple play champion this season is Graves, of course. 2 games against SKT, and then 1 pick of the likes of Maokai, and then back to the carry champions like Quinn. Just his strategic versatility for a guy who was a one-note tank player last season is amazing. On the other side, we have CJ Entus, fresh off a win, and with Mad Life in this squad, is right up there in terms of kill participation in the league.
Yeah, that's right. Currently sitting up there with 85.5% kill contribution, and that just shows that CJ is incredibly dependent on Mad Life in order to get these wins. Currently, they are number 10 in the league at goal differential at 15 minutes. Now, remember, there are 10 teams in this league, and they are currently at over negative 2,100 at 15 minutes. So this team has been a bit of a disaster.
But that stat in general is pretty crazy. Actually, the 3 other teams playing today also are towards the bottom, specifically Samsung and JinAir, right at the bottom in terms of their goal difference at 15 minutes.
Okay, that's true. But those teams, even though they're 8 and 9, have 1/3 of the differential. They're only about -700.
Okay.
-2100 Papa Smithy. I'm sorry, that is horrendous. And CJ, when they got their wins, they were playing with around Kramer's Blue Ezreal, with Lulu, Tom Kench, Alistar. But I think you just have to deny Mad Life Alistar in some of these matches, because that's been the big game changer for them.
So we're looking at the schedule for JinAir. Of course, they opened the season with that loss to Longzhou, but the big win was over SKT. At this point, the EM Fire and Afrika wins were expected, but this team has always been known to play up to the level of their opponents. CJ are right at the bottom. Will we see JinAir fall into some of those traps they did against Afrika last time out?
Yeah, and it's noteworthy that CJ Entus, their first 2 weeks were basically the most brutal possible. Week number 1, they had to play both SKT and the Tigers, and then they beat Spenu, and you can see the KDAs. There's Trace with a huge KDA, biggest in the league, and that comes with some losses too, so he's been more aggressive in lane, but he hasn't been dying more. He still has that incredible propensity just to stay alive, not get ganked in the laning phase. Great intuition on where the jungler is and when he can effectively push forward.
And look, we singled out Mad Life when talking about CJ Entus, of course, the only veteran on the squad, shy, available, but hasn't been playing, hasn't been screaming as far as we know. But I want to shift gears and talk about Kramer, of course, was from the Flash Wolves previously. This guy has the highest team percentage damage share of anyone in the league, actually even higher than Bane, who's in second place, 35.1%. Of course, that was on full display when they went solo damage carry, Blue Ezreal, and effectively a big tank line. And he did his job, so Kramer's stepping into the shoes quite well.
Well, there are several aspects of that, though.
Sure.
So the mitigating factors are CJ, we know Mad Life has an incredibly high kill contribution, and it's because they only make plays around Mad Life.
That's true.
Where is Mad Life? Mad Life's with Kramer, where the plays are being made. Really does help boost his damage. Also, Untara, we see a lot of top carrying, but he's been playing Tom Kench and Maokai.
Yes, he's
so
on
the
Maokai
damage,
duty.
the damage is coming from Kramer, really. And even when we talk about Sky in the mid lane, I mean, sure, he's played Lulu, but he's also played Victor poorly and not been much of a factor.
I mean, we kind of look at him as the wave clear only Victor, rather than doing those surprise bursts that we've seen from the likes of Crown and Fly on that champion. I agree, there's always caveats, but at least Kramer, when they put all the eggs in the Kramer basket, when he was playing Blue Ezreal with literally only utility and tank champions, had an impressive performance.
I mean, honestly, I just banned 3 champions against...
All right, 3 champions.
Against Mad Life.
I'm listening.
Alistar,
Yep.
Thresh, Bard, done.
Blitzcrank, baby. Let's get in there. Playmaking champions.
I mean, why not? If you know that they can't make a play without Mad Life, remove his playmaking champions, and then just leave all the OPs up and have the confidence that you're going to outplay their CJ's very middling mid and top laners.
I think you take away Ezreal. I think just as a standard pick, take away the Ezreal. I agree that you can take away, let's say, Ezreal, Alistar, Lulu would be my bans against them, because I feel like that kind of targets the only champions that the team has really looked impressive with.
That's fair. I guess I have more confidence in JinAir's solo lanes than that, just to kind of pick up the slack right there, but we'll see what their blue side ban is. They're actually going to ban Fiora, surprisingly enough.
That doesn't feel like it's in Trace's wheelhouse. Now, I say that, and it feels like Trace's wheelhouse is suddenly all of the champions in the league, but I feel like he's about lane pressure in terms of pushing on the likes of Top Graves, or he's more on the tank side. Fiora and her dueling hasn't really been his thing, even though he has shown the Quinn, of course, this season.
Yeah, that Quinn ban going to come out immediately. We have seen a lot of target bans of Graves, of Quinn, at Trace as the major threat, and now we are going to see the Corki, definitely a champion JinAir has liked to use in triple AD sieging compositions, so might as well not let them have that one been played by Kuzan and Pilot.
Mid lane Corki is such a menace. It's the one that I've been most impressed with. Coco just wailing away on mid lane Corki in a gangplank matchup is just the potential of this champion. The fact that he has early wave clear, you know, when it's those flex picks, Blue Ezreal and the mid lane Corki. I think Corki takes the cake in mid, and in general is more oppressive, so that's why he sees the early ban. And yeah, the Lulu ban does come out, so. Blue side Lulu though, that's surprising. It looks like they want to first pick something else.
Alistar, perhaps. I think you have to take the Alistar here, but no, the GP is available, and that means it's going to be handed over.
Question is, where is the gangplank going? Because this was an easy question when GBM was on the match and on the lineup. He was a wonderful mid lane gangplank player. Who's their gangplank player now?
Probably it'll go to Kuzan if I had to guess. could take away the Graves immediately and shut that pick down from JinAir, but they have a chance to take the Alistar again, and a lot of CJ's advantages have come off of Alistar dies with Untara's teleports into the bottom lane, so I'm a bit confused as to why you wouldn't take that pick away, because that has been really what has been leading CJ to success.
I mean, the Fiora blue side ban tells me that Untara must have been practicing the Fiora in solo queue, otherwise it's a bit bizarre to go and target ban Fiora against a player who's literally been on tank duty through and through. I agree, Alistar has been the key to their victories. Madlife has looked reinvigorated on the first champion that, of course, he was made famous on so many years ago now. And Poppy's the lock-in as well. Probably a top lane Poppy, but one day we're going to see this Poppy flexed into the support role.
Or the jungle.
Hopefully the support role first, but there is, as you say, scope for the jungle. Graves is available.
Yeah, they might take the Graves again.
Do you take Graves and Gangplank, though? I mean, maybe if you have Elise available, you can find magic damage from somewhere else, but risky to go both Graves and Gangplank.
Yeah, Lissandra's still up too, so they have some options. Kuzan could just take the Victor right away, play the wave clear game in mid, and buy time for Trace to play this GP in the top side.
I go so far as to say that Sky has only shown passable results on Lulu and Victor. Take the Victor away, Lulu's banned. Sky will have to show something different. His Twisted Fate game left a lot to be desired.
Also, they banned Corki too, so there's not really an easy, safe mid laner that's available for him. There we go. We could see Kalista and Victor, so very common picks here from JinAir, lacking a little bit of wave clear early in the side lanes.
So JinAir's tipping the hand. They're saying these are our solo lanes, deal with them with 100% committing on top lane Gangplank. We have Victor in the mid lane. CJ now has so much scope to try and play around what JinAir has very clearly drafted into. The issue here is that it almost feels like a pseudo Katie Rolster situation where you have good wave clear from the mid lane, you have an outscaled top laner. So will CJ look to just stick with the Poppy top, or will they try something different? Because JinAir have definitely laid all their cards on the table.
The Poppy, though, pretty obviously going top from the first round of the draft, though, so they had their choice as to whether they were going to try and play the GP in the Poppy, and they made that decision. Sky now hovering over that Elise for bubbling, and Kramer could just go right back onto the Ezreal. It's the one pick that he has done quite well on so far.
So the question is, what will the mid lane champion be to round out what is again looking like a Kramer-focused blue Ezreal comp? I guess there is, of course, the blue Ezreal being a flex pick. So there is the chance that it's going to be a mid lane Ezreal, but mid lane Ezreal has been pretty disappointing so far this season. And Victor especially, the champion with the most reliable line wave clear, will be able to easily push in an Ezreal. So probably going to see some sort of wave clear champion with the last one, maybe even the Sandra mid from Sky.
Yeah, interesting that they are so adamant about this particular Ezreal pick. Kalista and Thresh available and could create a very strong laning combination against the Alistar Ezreal early, which is going to really struggle against the Kalista combination there with the Thresh, and they could just take Rek'Sai and Trundle.
I mean, you're right on that point, though. The lane presence of Alistar Ezreal is very, very low. I mean, level 6 is a good burst initiate combo, but previous to that, going to be all about scaling up those tiers. Maybe lane swaps to open up the Alistar for roaming and try and get what Rox Tigers were doing so regularly. Get that Ezreal in a solo off lane just to power up the tier. And yeah, wave clear is what's needed in mid. The Orianna makes some degree of sense.
Could go with the TF again if they're comfortable into that matchup. Now, JinAir has opted for some incredible zone control with the Pillar, the Gravity Field, and the Gangplank Ultimate, the barrels with this composition. If they start setting up around Baron or Dragon, CJ is going to be in a lot of trouble because they're going to have to face check that, and it is going to hurt.
The late game team fights are terrifying. As you mentioned, setting up around Baron with the barrels, with the Trundle, even in terms of just wave clearing and engage or disengage with the Pillar, there's a lot of options open for JinAir, and maybe CJ just going to look for the mid game and try and get something rolling with the Twisted Fate. That seems to be the pick they're hovering over the longest. And maybe just try and target out this game plan, because although there is the remove Scurvy, Poppy, Elise, and Twisted Fate showing up in a lane, there's not enough oranges to deal with the turret dives potentially around the top.
But there is Trace's amazing game sense, right? He's just a player that, he's one of the hardest top laners to gank because he always seems to know when you're coming. He wards well, he plays in a fashion where ganking is extremely unreliable in that top lane. So we'll see what Trace can engineer. There's a reason why he has the highest KDA in this league, and at the same time, he's been carrying this JinAir team quite a bit. He finds the farm, he plays aggressively when it's necessary. We've seen him play very forward in the lane and push down turrets, especially that tier 1 against weak opponents, and he's been protected a lot by Winged. There's a strong synergy between Trace and Winged tends to just hover on that top side of the map.
All I can say for CJ is set up your lane swap, try and punish this game plan, whether it's with dives, whether it's trying to get him into a bad matchup in the side lanes, because late game, you're going to find absolutely no joy facing what JinAir has put together.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, so CJ has to make these early ganks count. They have the kill pressure in both of the side lanes, especially with bubbling there. And a lot of hard CC, but I don't know if I was CJ, given what we've seen from them so far, I don't know if I'd be relying on Sky to win me this game, Papa Smithy.
All the eggs in the Sky basket. That'll be interesting.
It will be. All right, game 1, guys. JinAir versus CJ right now. CJ fans still loud for this new roster as they try and work their way into March, basically. They picked up 1 win before March. That's actually sort of impressive in and of itself.
Exactly. The march into March has been propped up, Monte Cristo.
The March, CJ's March to March.
That's what they're doing.
Well, we'll hope when they get there it wasn't a death march.
Look, March Madness is in full effect in the CJ camp. In fact, even the Ides of March are looking pretty good.
Yeah, they are looking
That's
pretty
when
good.
BDD's available.
Yeah, maybe we'll get some March Mad Life too. Who knows?
January's been pretty good for Mad Life so far, even in a losing team. So.
I mean, he's been undoubtedly playing very well under these adverse conditions, and we're not going to have a lane swap in the end, so this should be pretty favorable here for JinAir, especially in this 2v2 matchup. Kramer and Mad Life going to have to be quite careful. And they have the blue Ezreal again, but far less protection than they've had when Kramer has shown those hard carry performances in the past.
It's surprising to see lane swap not put together. Maybe Sky's going to be paying extra attention to bottom lane around level 6. This is a lot of ganking in the off lanes possible because the CC in the lanes is pretty incredible. This is a jungler's paradise. If you're bubbling and you see the wall slam from Poppy in the knock-up from level 6, Twisted Fate has the gold card, and Mad Life on Alistar in the bottom lane. Bubbling has been one of the ones we've kind of shaked our head at. It's definitely been one of the poorer performers on this CJ lineup.
Wow, they gave blue buff to Trace.
Wow, this is turning the clock back a little bit.
Yeah, actually, so Trace actually shared XP on both of those camps, comes into the lane with the blue buff. So we talked about the focus on Trace from JinAir, and we're seeing it again. Of course, Rek'Sai doesn't really need the blue buff, so that's an interesting adaptation here so that Gangplank can farm up, really harass in the early game.
Without the lane swap being a factor, as Kramer takes so much damage, but without the lane swap being a factor, remember, blue buff is usually skipped over by Rek'Sai and then donated around 5 minutes. It turns those timers around, you can play around that to some degree. As you mentioned, just not necessary for a kit whatsoever. But starting off with the blue buff is a different pathing choice, and we'll see what Trace can do with that extra blue.
I like it. More blue buffs in the game overall. Might as well hand it off to a top laner with which it will be extremely effective. He also has that corrupting potion, so just a ridiculous amount of sustain.
Speaking of corrupting potions, I like that Sky's picked it up in the mid lane. Often we'll see mid laners go a bit more greedy with the Dorans, but corrupting potion, if you can get that early advantage just from popping it, winning those trades early, the extra sustain can really be important.
Yeah, so Trundle, that early deep ward as Che makes his way into that side of the jungle. They have really great vision to see if Elise is coming. Not really an angle they're going to be able to take. And JinAir going to play very aggressively early on in the bottom side, try and deny this blue Ezreal. And I like their warding to make this happen.
And Trace in the top lane already being punishing. In a melee versus melee matchup for Gangplank, he can actually take the role of the lane bully and be quite aggressive in that regard.
Tara already burning through all 3 charges pre-4 minutes of the Corrupting Potion. Meanwhile, Trace still has another 2, so it's going to get pretty rough here for Untari. He's going to have to use that TP early.
It's one of those things with Gangplank in particular where you conceptualize him as a very weak lane. Often we see him in mid against ranged champions, against a lot of kill pressure. In top against a melee champion, he can take on that extra role of being able to harass, of putting in excellent trades. Just because you go for a last hit, you get punished by those barrels being placed at the last second. So
plus his passive too.
Even the passive you mentioned for the trade. So it's just one of those situations where Trace might actually be able to build up a CS advantage. And when that's on a Gangplank, we all know how easy that gold league can start, especially since players have been starting to put points into Bandit to actually get more passive gold with trades. Yeah, I mean, gold generation could be just really, really accelerated for Trace.
Yeah, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on his itemization as he goes up by about 13 CS here. Big wave though for Intara. He equalized just a little bit, but Trace just playing so aggressively. Still has a couple charges left on his Corrupting Potion, so he is just sitting pretty in that top side. He pushes out, and look at the pathing here from Wing. Really just great timing. Coming back around, making sure that he can be there for a counter gank if he needs to, and Trace moving forward. Elise Bubbling trying to get back into lane right now, but Trace is in a very good position, just constantly harassing. Jeez. That blue buff early on really helping him win a lot of these trades. Bubbling here, trying to wrap around.
Has defensive vision for this, but Poppy goes in.
Yeah, Poppy actually going to run right through, and there we go. Flash going to come through. Bubbling going to hit the cocoon afterwards, but there's the oranges. And Untara opened up with a heroic charge really early and kind of pushed him away, so a very well coordinated gank right there. No real advantage taken. Trace will be forced off, but he's got that TP, and he's coming back with the Sheen for more damage. And here we go. Sky in the mid lane has to flash. There's a flash follow-up from Winged and Kuzan. Kuzan, first blood on Victor. 2 flashes used, 1 flash taken, but that's a heap of gold there in Kuzan's pocket.
Our fans at home can see 2 games of flash chicken, because up the top lane, you saw Trace hold onto that cooldown. He saw the heroic charge come out, waited it out, bought as much distance as possible, held onto the oranges, got away, and then in mid, Sky, he flashed late. He didn't really have a way to get away. He got punished for overextending, but 2 very similar ganks, and overall you see JinAir cleaner with their execution and pick up that early advantage.
Yeah, Sky has to TP back to the mid lane too, so it's 1 less global that he has to get around on the map. Trace started to play much further back, even after he picked up that Sheen, respecting the fact that TF is alone in the lane right now, doesn't want to be the recipient of any plays. Kuzan has opted for Cleanse this game against the Twisted Fate.
Means that CJ do have that slight advantage in the global party, given that it's basically going to be Cannon Barrage versus the extra teleport from Twisted Fate. But reality is, 5v4 will be the likely inevitable bot lane outcome in about 5 minutes' time.
If they can actually pull it off here with Untara, who, you know, one thing, Untara's been okay. He's been decent on this new CJ roster, and his strengths have really come from his coordination. And this is definitely the most Trace way to play Gangplank ever. It's like, I'm not walking up there.
Hey guys, don't bother fighting for a while down bot. No ult. But the jungler wasn't even on your side. No ult.
I mean, that is very typical of Trace, though. He will make those very conservative decisions, and that's why he's so hard to gank.
His sixth sense, better than any play I've ever seen, honestly.
Yeah, it's
so
quite
many
impressive.
times he just will never push to that second brush on the top. He just always has an idea. You must just assume equal communication between players, but his use of the information he's given seems to be levels above other opposition.
Although this has cost him when it comes to his farm. Without that flash, he hasn't been able to push up, and without Wings being up there so much on the top side, is heading back over right now. We'll see that blue buff spawn and be taken by Kuzan.
Not too exciting there. It's going to be wave clear wars. It'd be interesting to see whether CJ go all in on a bot lane gank with Sky, or whether they have Bubbling cover mid when he pushes out, because the one thing about Victor, very punishing if you leave lane. He's good at chip damage when you're in lane, But if you lead lane, instant pushes like you can see clearly on your screen, and does a lot of turret damage. If Twisted Fate loses his turret, things go from bad to worse for CJ.
Definitely not the situation you want to be in as a Twisted Fate player, having to play the long lane and try and make those ports work. So winged ults back into his jungle there in the bottom. CJ does clear out a pink ward from the river. So JinAir has to start playing further back, and they've recovered this CS differential now with Kramer. So everything pretty much even. JinAir took a bit of a CS lead early. They got the first blood, but still 1,500 gold up. Still going to be feeling pretty good about that. GP getting a lot of time just to farm up with his Q.
And look, both teams have a champion who's realistically looking to opt into the late game. Blue Ezreal, the moment you start tier, you know you're a champion, not looking for an early game spike. And Gangplank just has that amazing late game scaling. I think you still have to hand it to JinAir in the late game though, so...
Yeah, absolutely.
When the Iceborne comes out, when the Muramana is transformed, it needs to be really quick pedal to the metal action from CJ, or they're going to find a free farmed Gangplank in team fights.
I don't like the free farm Gangplank in team fights.
No, I mean...
It's those barrels.
When he shows up with 40% CDR and an Infinity Edge, you're in for a bad time. But he can be.
Do you like 1,000 damage armor shred barrels?
After I build some armor items, oh, it's just the best feeling.
All right, here we go. Kuzan has Wing there, who comes in and dissuades the gank attempt as Sky and Bubbling pull back, not wanting to engage on that early, especially since Sky only has cooldown boots right now.
I also think that's just bad calling, shot calling from CJ, because you're ganking a mid laner, as you mentioned, with your mid laner having CDR boots only, and the enemy mid laner having cleanse available. It's not like Mad Life had roamed there for some uncleansable CC. You can really tell which teams are on top with their communication, which junglers make the intelligent pathing, because there's some ganks where the percentage success is somewhere around 50 to 70%, and there are some ganks where it's 10%, it's hidden hope only. And the hidden hope just is the sign of some not so great pathing.
Yeah. And let's see here, Deep Ward will detect Sky, moving back into the mid lane. Pinged out right there. He doesn't find an opportunity there on the bottom side of the map. Mad Life is over 6 though, so he has his ultimate, and they can start making some dive plays with the Lee Sin TF if they so choose.
It's about even when we're talking about the dives, top and bot. Top will be the most desirable place to set up a gank, but it's Trace we're talking about. He has a defensive pink ward, so at least doesn't have an obvious way to path into this lane. But ganking the middle, it's not what you want to do. They need to pull off something big in one of these side lanes, and she's at least cheating towards the bottom side of the map.
Yeah, but JinAir really not taking any risks right now. See how far back they're playing next to their turrets, kind of across the board. This is really how we used to see JinAir play last year, just incredibly defensive lanes, and then trying to scale into the late game.
This is the KT Rolster style. That's what they're shown in 2016, has been this wave clear wars and scaling top laner. Bubbling's shown his face in bot, but looking for a flash pole from Mad Life. Pilot needs to be a little bit careful in this situation, unbeknownst to him.
I think he's kind of on top of this one, though. Che coming up there for the last hit on the campaign. Hello, Bubbling, and nope. He will be found out. Cocoon just out of reach of Che. Well, Kuzan's going to be happy to see that. Can just start zoning TF off the minion wave right now.
So let's talk about how the best teams play around situations like this when they're in CJ's shoes. The one thing they'll do, you'll notice, is when do they coordinate that bot lane turret dive? It's always when the trade damage comes through. It's always when Winged and Kuzan go to pick up the blue buff, right? Whenever they have the exact timing for that, that's actually a 30-second window, or maybe a little bit less than that, but that's the window to actually make the 4-man play in bottom. So we'll see if CJ can actually take into account the blue buff timing, that of course is a bit different given that it was first donated at 3 minutes into the game.
It's actually not that much different. It's going to be about 15 seconds different on the next spawn here, because we did see the Twisted Fate get that immediately. So they will have a timing window, but it will be narrow.
Using those narrow timing windows is all that CJ really have, unless they're just hoping for the ultimate Blue Ezreal late game bang show, like he showed yesterday.
I think we're all looking forward to another bang show.
A late game bang show, that's what you
right.
like to opt into?
That's what I like. All right, so blue buff will be taken by Kuzan. Meanwhile, blue buff spawned already for CJ, so not even 15 seconds between the buff spawns right now.
Mad Life and Elise are on a mission, but spotted out by multiple wards from the side of JinAir.
They've got so much vision in that bottom side. Sentinel sees them on their retreat after the pink ward is taken out, so they don't actually get very much out of that. Che here to clean up some wards in response, and now they're going to know exactly where Sky is on this blue buff.
Good timing also. They'll have the great timer for that. But it kind of saddens me that the two effective ways to play League of Legends are what the Rocks Tigers do, the high-pressure game, and then there's the KT and now JinAir special of maybe later. Let's start the game at 35 minutes. What do you think?
Well, I think, Papa Smithy, that CJ is statistically right where they usually are at 15 minutes, which is minus over 2,000 gold. So they're keeping true to where they've been so far this entire season, and Sky has kind of just slipped further and further behind Kuzan in the mid lane, even as Untara and Kramer have caught up. But look at the difference between Winged and Bubbling in the jungle right here. A 30 CS difference already.
Wow.
That is huge between junglers in 15 minutes. Wing just power farming for a lot more gold.
Kind of the interesting thing about this trend that CJ's finding is it's either actually an optimistic one or a depressing one, depending how you look at it, because this is clearly a mechanical problem. It's not like Winged has been ever present across the lanes. The mechanics of some of these players maybe aren't up to par with their opposition, but come March, the two players, look, we don't know how they'll adjust to the top level of play, but their mechanics on display, BDD in particular, have been very impressive. So strategically, CJ have been fine, even maybe better than you might expect for a very bottom level team. But mechanically, that seems to be their biggest slip-ups.
Well, right here, Bubbling really hasn't had an effect on this game, and he's cost his team a lot simply by not farming. His ganks have not yielded any fruit, and he's wasted quite a lot of time actually attempting them, and also not being able to farm anywhere near as efficiently. Wing too has used opportunities from Bubbling just to play around in his jungle, get that edge.
So the first aggressive posture from CJ, but it only gets them a wrap to camp. Not really anything to discuss. Notable that Bubbling, of course, is one of the few players in this lineup, I believe it's him and Mad Life, that don't have an understudy. There's no sub jungler, so at least as of now, this is best you're going to get, CJ.
I think Bubbling has been the big question mark, and it's games like this where he gets horrendously out-farmed. You know, when we saw the Ku Tigers at the end of last year, and we saw Hojin's performance of Worlds, his Winged takes some damage. They're actually going to GP ult and throw Che in. Bubbling is caught, and he will die as soon as he comes back down to earth. Che actually picks up that kill.
They don't even have to invest too much into getting it. It's nice movement from Kuzan.
I can't
in position for it.
I can't count the number of times I have seen Bubbling die in the bottom side of the river so far this season. He gets caught out there all the time and collapsed on, and he doesn't have the pressure. Look how fast Kuzan was able to get there. They're going to try and respond with a dive. Trace actually getting low here in this top side, and can he survive this? He's going to keep running right here, flash for flash, but he's in the brush. Meanwhile, Winged on the opposite side of the map. Sky is out of range of that gold card. Wild card's not going to hit it. Trace remains safe. And now Untara going to knock Rek'Sai back into base. Now can they take a turret? But Pilot here getting a lot of auto attacks. Kramer trying to defend the wave as best he can. Will take a couple of autos in return, but that mid turret nearly falls, and GP and Rek'Sai are enough in the top side to make sure JinAir holds on to their tier 1.
CJ have been heavily punished for tying that turret out. We spoke about it. Try for that port against a Victor comp with the rotation through from Pilot, as you could see, and you will lose your turret or damn close to it. Funny thing about what you were saying about Bubbling is that you could repeat that sentence, take out Bubbling and put in Ambition, and you get the story of 2015 CJ.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
So it's nothing new for the CJ fans. They're used to their junglers solo dying. That didn't work.
Well, that was weird.
It's like he cancelled his Bubbling. I don't think you're supposed to be able to do that.
Well, he's just going to leave those barrels there for later. He accomplished his mission of delaying the recall, nonetheless.
I miss GBM and his secret barrels that he prepared for later.
Well, That's okay. Maybe we'll get lucky and someone will leave him Gangplank in the NALCS, Papa Smithy.
I saw him solo queue with Gangplank. He still got it, Monty. He still got it.
Well, back to some mid lane action, and Sky is going to be pretty handcuffed here. He essentially can't leave his lane anymore, or he will lose that very low HP turret. Wing doing a bit of a Prey Seeker drive-by, just to let him know who's boss. And they will be transitioning that blue buff into the hands of Kuzan once more.
With the Rylai's completed, he actually has to be pretty particular about his positioning in lane, because make no mistake, even with an Abyssal Scepter, you have very low base stats as Twisted Fate. There's definitely still some burst potential. Each of these trades, even with the magic resist, is going to be doing around 40% of his health if he takes a Q&E, so has to be wary of dying to the victor.
The first dragon over to JinAir also. They've got so many different ways to snowball this game at this stage. Madlife has actually taken the early enchant on the boots. That's how desperate he is going to be to make some flash plays here. Lowering that cooldown as much as he can, and there goes the Rift Herald.
Harold the Herald?
Yeah, he decided that he was going to commit suicide in the Baron pit. I don't know why it shows him killing himself. That's very grim, Riot. I think Baron should kill him. Maybe he should just go away and live a happy life after this. He's like, well, at least I survived the first 20 minutes here. I'm not on death row anymore.
I like to think that he takes a winter vacation every 20 minutes into a game. It's like, I've seen enough.
It's not very winter in the map, is it, Papa Smithy?
They tried that. It was very hard to read skill shots in the winter, so stick with one season Summoner's Rift only.
Actually, you know, League of Legends is seasonal. Uh-oh, Trace actually getting jumped here again. He's going to GP ult himself. There's the knockup coming through, and finally he's going to go down. Untara tanks the turret. Sky still takes a hit.
This is actually
on the retreat, but they're going to get the mid turret, so this is not going to be a good trade for CJ.
But at least they had both Elise and Alistair present the moment Twisted Fate left lanes. There wasn't a scenario where they would keep this turret. That was better lane play from CJ around the mid lane, but because of the previous chunking, all a bit of a moot point.
I don't think Elise and Alistair could have done anything right there. Winged also going to get some free time on the topside turret. This is actually a gank that could cost them 2 turrets in the end. Winged has a lot of items right now, and he's just going to Rek'Sai punch that thing into oblivion. Maybe Untara can save it. Yeah, he will, just barely, but that gank goes south really fast for CJ.
2 out of 2 times they've teleported top. They've been punished, and that's what a smart team with good shot calling like JinAir can do. The Destinies have, if anything, been counterproductive from a CJ Entus perspective.
They have not been good. Meanwhile, Winged here still riding a huge CS advantage, and we can see that reflected in the items a little bit at this stage too.
Has there ever been a jungle Flame Horizon?
I'm sure there has been.
That's something that's probably been less common.
The Meteos Horizon.
Farming is certainly, it's just better use of your time. That's all you can say from Winged. He has been involved in more kills, 2 versus 0, which is pretty infinitely more kills, but just used his time smarter. His laners have also played safe when they need to. That's what you always get out of Trace. And it's the reason why Chaser was so strong in this JinAir lineup, was that GBM and Trace at the time were always so smart playing around ganks, and Chaser played a farm-heavy and pressure-heavy style, depending on how the early game was going, and it always suited them. So Winged is stepping in pretty admirably for Chaser. Here we go.
Oh, there we go. Pilot gonna just take Chade back, and they try and make a play, but Pilot actually flashes the gold card, gets done well underneath his turret. There's the GP ultimate. There's not really a lot of follow-up here, though. Kind of a waste of the Gangplank ultimate, actually.
Now he can't clear this wave, Mon.
How is he going to push this turret now, Papa Smithy? Yeah, Untara here already with the Iceborne Gauntlet, so able to trade pretty well against GP at this early stage. He's opting for the Essence Reaver this game.
He already has Trinity Force Essence Reaver.
At 23 minutes, yes. It is rather disgusting, you have to say.
You add in an Infinity Edge, it's going to be done at, what, 32 minutes maybe?
I think that's the kind of timing we're probably looking at, maybe even faster depending on how much more farm he can get. Dragon number 2 now in the hands of the JinAir GreenWings.
Let's talk about how important it is for a team comp with Gangplank to have objective control. Because in the late game, so much of Gangplank's damage is around the barrels, that's very well known. Setting up aggressive barrels when you're not being able to kite backwards is actually really hard. Even with 40% CDR, you usually need 3 barrels to be able to link up and really snipe someone who's aware and who knows that you're looking to fight. And then you only have 2 left, and you can't really do it. Multiple rotations of that sort of damage. If you're fighting around 4th Dragon where the enemy has to come to you, Gangplank is so much easier and more predictable to play. And the damage is so much more reliable. He's having trouble walking into lane and be more than that.
Yeah, wait here just for a little bit of protection. Not going to clear out the ward though, even though his Raptor buff was popped, still on the Poppy pursuit.
With wave clear, with 2 dragons in the pocket, with good vision play, Trace being empowered to use that CS advantage and go crazy just a little bit.
And here we are, GP ult used one more time just to clear the way, but it looks like it's not going to be quite fast enough to save this turret as Kramer and Bubbling whittle it down, and they take the first turret of the game for CJ. But there's a lot more that's about to fall on the side of JinAir. They have that top turret of CJ already at a sliver of health, and now they're going to finish it off.
Lane assignment's going to be interesting. Winged is trying to pick on Antara, though.
Yeah, Winged actually just co-opting the wave right there, cutting right in, and taking it out. So they fight tower with tower, and now only a tier 1 left for CJ in the bottom lane. Everything else down, and TF with very limited options for what he's going to do and where he's going to gank.
Well, with a build like that, it's mad life.
Nice flash from Kuzan.
Sky's gone for the Lich Bane second. It's probably going to be Zhonya's third, but he has a split push build completed. Will they put him in the bot lane to try and just push up quickly and create some headaches for JinAir? Or they try something different? Again, his build is only really primed for split pushing, so he's probably the best one to go to this bottom lane and try and do damage to this inner turret down bottom.
Kuzan too has picked up a Rylai's first this game, not typically the primary item that we see onto Victor, so really prioritizing some of this crowd control and team fights before stacking up for the Deathfire cap.
One thing I like about what Kuzan's done is that he has a Gangplank in top lane with an expensive build, looking to take a farm approach. I actually like going over Frost Queen's play in this game because, again, while it has a great utility, it doesn't offer that much damage front-loaded. So going for the picks, going for the lane pressure with Rylai's Rush, I think is a smart choice from Kuzan, given the Gangplank type.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. Plus, you could punish the overextension. Kramer actually had a flash out of there as Wing came in from the side. You can punish a lot of overextensions, continue to chase people down with that Rylai's. If you see somebody too far away from their turret, it's pretty easy for Victor just to duel them with a Rylai's and make sure that you can successfully win any chase that occurs.
It's just a sign of a good team comp when you don't have 3-tier champions. You don't have all early and all late game. You need varied power spikes so that you can always be looking to fight for certain objectives. Maybe not the same objectives as your opponent, but always looking to fight for something. So I do like that from Kuzan. Just gives them more flexibility to opt into fights if they feel they need to, or to delay and farm up as Trace, no doubt going to do.
Trace is getting huge so far. More than 10 CS a minute on Gangplank.
Oh boy.
Well, of course, gets that extra gold.
What's Poppy to do? Poppy doesn't have kill pressure on a Gangplank. CJ could have set up around top, but notably, we saw Bubbling return to mid. You never gank for a Twisted Fate. You gank with a Twisted Fate.
Yeah, definitely odd decisions made by Bubbling this game. But CJ still in it, and we've seen them play for the late game before and come out victorious. However, they are going to be hamstrung this game by their lack of dragons and their questionable ability to make plays on the map. Who can they gank right now? I mean, Winged has nearly 4,000 HP in a Banshee's Veil already.
Banshee's really quick, so obviously he wants to get in the backline, whether that's a flank or whether that's just coming in with the flash. He doesn't want Poppy, Alistar, any of these kind of disengage tools to be useful, and Bubbling wants to team fight, because that's double Giant Spell. He's trying to get tanky as cost effectively as possible.
Stacking that HP. Pilot 2 actually going for the QSS into Last Whisper, so not something that we see too often on the Callistas. Usually you'd see a Bloodthirster third for
Depends
that
who you're talking to,
overshield.
right? We got Stitch later tonight. He's the master of the Steric's Gauge into more of Malmortius.
Definitely true. All right, big gank coming in though. Bubbling and Mad Life here to help.
Mad Life lost interest.
Nope, he got bored. Just wanted to get Trace off the turret.
Die, Spiderlings.
Get that gold.
Hey, he gets the bonus gold. It was
Yeah.
from the barrel.
Exactly. It's a lot of money to be found in those spiders.
I just realized we have both bankers. We have Twisted Fate passive and Gangplank in the game. Everyone's cashing in on the minion kills.
No Avarice Blade though. Sad times.
They buffed Cull in 6.2, Monty.
Oh boy.
So, are you ready for Cull top Gangplank?
We've seen the Cold Gangplank in the LPL.
It didn't go that well that time.
To the surprise of everyone, Papa Smithy,
Are you ready for Sapphire Crystal refillable potion into Sheen Cull for just value everywhere? What is lane pressure?
Yeah, I was asking myself that game. Meanwhile, third dragon now. JinAir happy just to play around this objective until somebody stops them.
CJ just seems to be slowly losing through inaction. That is the reality that we're seeing in this game.
Yep, there we go. Speaking of slowly losing, no one in the bottom side to prevent the turret from going down, and now JinAir 2 towers up. Over 5k gold right now, and this Gangplank is only getting more dangerous as time goes on.
Let's opt into the 3-item late game Gangplank already.
Wow, so you said 32 minutes. You were wrong, Bubs, with the under 30,
He even
actually.
fit in this improved boots as well.
It's impressive. But when you're left to your own devices and given 3 spiderlings to get extra gold off of.
The crazy thing is that Gangplank is susceptible to what CJ have put together. You might think, okay, but they'll try the gold card or the wall slam and have it be orange, but they have the knockup coming through from Poppy. There's no way for them to play around that. Alistair, theoretically, if this was Gorilla, he would have made those sick roams to the top lane. And his CC is also unmitigatable by the cleanse effect of the oranges. There were ways for CJ to play around top lane Gangplank as if it was a top lane rise. Top lane carries can be dealt with, but CJ just haven't had the lane assignments to do that.
And they really haven't found anything preferable in this game so far. The TPs from their mid laner Sky on TF have done more harm than good as JinAir has quickly taken advantage of them.
Not sure what CJ is hoping for because they haven't even had control over an objective like Dragon, so many different ways. It's looking like bad times for CJ Entus.
Yeah, they have the Kalista too. They have the GP. They can do this Baron very fast, and now they're gonna try and make a move. A lot of pings coming through on the top side. Bubbling decides he doesn't want anything to do with Winged, who will just take out his pink ward after they drop the 1 HP ward with the blue trinket in the brush.
Speaking of pink wards, really nice setup. 4 pink wards in the general vicinity of Baron.
Why not? This is what you want to do right now. Just keep your Victor in the mid lane for the wave clear play around your much longer top lane. Sky now in trouble. He's going to hit the gold card. Trace eats an orange, gets him down to 50%. No follow-up, however. Poppy not seen on the map. Trace didn't have enough wards to actively pursue that, but guess what that means, Papa Smithy? It's Baron time.
It's certainly Baron time. We've got Winged on goalkeeper duty as well, but they're going to have to back away. But that's Twisted Fate ult blown. So
Yep.
that's the only reliable check they have. Blue trinkets aren't available. They all have spot water. There's probably not a world where JinAir sneak in a Baron. Surprisingly, I've seen a couple of snuck Barons so far this season, even with the introduction of the improved blue trinket. But JinAir have those other wing conditions. They can start pushing. They've got the wave clear. They can just wait for Dragon 4. It's going to take the miracle team fight from CJ to make something happen this game.
Yeah, and look at this too. Kramer has decided to go for BT in addition to his Iceborne and his Muramana. That's the first time we've seen that. Usually you build Blade of the Ruined King, and he honestly needs that right now. As you see the engage coming in, Trace is just going to TP in. Sky turns golden, but Trace is going to turn him into gold, pick up the kill, and they're going to back out.
Might even go back to the Baron plan. That's been something that looks pretty straightforward. Sky has a 50-second death time. We're 33 minutes in. Those longer death timers are certainly in full display. Trace is looking for the link.
They just want to bait it. And there we go. Pillar comes through. They're going to try and get people in this choke point. They have to run through the river. Mad Light pops his ultimate, trying to escape. Flashes over the wall. And they're Che gonna flash for another pillar. They will catch Mad Life on the edge in spite of the Poppy ult. Getting rid of Che, and now they have another chance to turn. They've got 20 seconds until Sky is up with his TP, and that should be enough time.
20 seconds is an eternity. Free farmed Gangplank and Kalista. It's going to take something special from Bubbling, and for now, he's completely zoned from this Baron.
Yeah, look at the barrels too, just in case somebody decides to try and make a play over the back wall. They had it cut off with the GP barrels already, so easy Baron there for JinAir. But that's the right call. They want to play around that Baron at this point in the game. 33 minutes in, Gravity Field. They have a pillar from Trundle. They have GP barrels. There's no way that CJ actually checks that Baron without taking a whole heap of damage.
It's a casual 8-level difference between Gangplank and Mad Life.
You know,
Trace and Mad Life,
whatever.
8 levels, you know. Just standard stuff when it comes to level discrepancies. And this is the last part of the game for JinAir to show us that they're one of these top teams. Look, they actually in isolated games did this sort of display last season. It was just finishing the game was something they struggled at.
Bubbling takes the big barrel hit. Trace there, just gonna slash him down. Passive will finish off the kill. Trace gonna eat some oranges, I guess. You can't actually cleanse the knockup there, Trace.
You only cleanse the slow that comes from the knockup, which isn't quite as big a deal. But JinAir finishing games are actually one of the things they struggled at doing, but so far, looks like they're gonna be able to do that. Breaking the base quite easy.
Yeah, JinAir playing a very clean game of League of Legends. 6 kills in 35 minutes, and there's the first inhibitor. But they got exactly what they wanted. They played around their lanes very intelligently. They didn't put the pressure on when they didn't have to. They didn't play over aggressively, knowing that they could just farm up and play the Baron and Dragon game with the zones on their composition, and it's worked out really, really well.
They're going to be freshly swapped, freshly shopped, and rocking the Baron buff when they show up at this Dragon in 10 seconds as well.
It's great timing from JinAir. Yet another Dragon they will be in place for. Just going to push out the bottom side and use this Baron buff to try and capitalize, put them on the doorstep of Dragon number 5. Meanwhile, CJ will attempt to contest this, but they're going to have to give up on this pretty quickly.
They don't have good structure or Baron damage either. Mad Life caught.
He's on the outside right there. They can't do it. They have to go save Mad Life. Mad Life didn't take too much damage, nor did he have to use the Unbreakable Will, but here's welcome to Zone Town. And Untara going to go in. Meanwhile, Kuzan is not there, but more barrels going down in the choke point. They actually managed to get into the river, so a bit of a mistake there from JinAir. And True Shot Barrage will hit Pilot. Untara going to follow up right afterwards. Misses his ultimate, though, as Kuzan sidesteps it. And there's Untara going to be falling. Chaos Storm zoning Sky out of this fight. Kramer trying to get the Mystic shots in on the side, but Mad Life is dead. Trace now right in the middle. Double kill for Kalista. Triple kill for Kalista. Quadra kill for Kalista.
Will it be the Penta?
Is it going to be the Penta here from Pilot? Pilot going to try and hop through this minion wave. Exhaust goes down, and there's the gold. The Zonias, will he finish it? Penta for Pilot, and they're just going to pile in through to the base.
That was really well played by JinAir. Okay, they could have been slightly more on point with denying the entrance to the Dragon. They give up the Dragon. It's not a perfect game, but only a single kill. 2 turrets and a Dragon to show for 37 minutes of League of Legends from CJ. Controlled, on-point league from JinAir.
Yeah, very nice shot calling. Really good use of that composition. They didn't give CJ anything at all. I mean, the TF ults were actually in favor of JinAir that game because CJ couldn't get anything done, and JinAir just turned the tables on them every single time.
The macro game from JinAir was just so much clearer. They knew exactly what they needed to do, and CJ, they had tools that could be put together to make a game-winning game plan. They just forgot to put them together. That was one phase that certainly seemed to elude them. Made nothing out of the Twisted Fate, made nothing out of the CC in the lanes, and watched JinAir win the game.
And another great game for Trace, who continues to show the surprising depth of his champion pool. If you told me at the end of the summer season, where Trace played 90% of his games on Rumble and Maokai, that he was going to come in and start carrying games with Quinn, with Gangplank, with Graves, I would not have believed you, Bob Smithy.
With Ignite Quinn, but also show that he could play the Maokai as well. This guy is the pillar of his team and is suddenly top 2, top 3 with Someday and Smeb, definitely. But just from his play and the flexibility of it, crazy stuff from Trace.
Yeah, the shot calling too is the huge difference because the way they play the map with Trace is so much better than what we've seen with Sowan. So him coming back in has been a major boon to this team, and they go up 1-0 in this series. Very clean game number one. JinAir has a chance to close it out in just a few minutes.